My name is Avery Collins, and 3 years ago, I thought I was living my dream. Every morning I'd wake up at 5:45 a.m., lace up my sneakers, and jog the loop around Echo Lake in Denver. That half hour of cool air and silence was the calm before the chaos, before the endless client calls, website mock-ups, investor meetings, and brand consultations. I ran a boutique digital marketing firm with my best friend, Chase Morgan, and we had built it from scratch. We called it Brightside Creative, a name we scribbled on a napkin in a greasy breakfast diner back in college. Chase and I had always shared a vision: build something that mattered, that helped small businesses shine. We were two broke kids with $2,000 and a dream. And somehow we made it work. At least, I thought we had. By 2022, we had 10 employees, dozens of clients, and a modest downtown office with exposed brick and overpriced coffee pods. I was the heart of the company, client-facing, creative director, and strategist. Chase handled operations, finances, and back-end stuff I never had the patience for. I trusted him completely. We used to joke that I was the soul, and he was the spine. People always told me to watch my back. Get a lawyer involved. Make sure everything's in writing. But when you've been best friends with someone since sophomore year and you've seen them cry over their dad's cancer diagnosis, it doesn't feel necessary to question a handshake. Brightside was growing, and with growth came long nights, stress wrinkles, and missed birthdays. But I loved it. Even when I was exhausted, I felt alive, because it was ours. Chase had started acting a little different, though. Nothing obvious. Just small things. He stopped joining client calls and brushed off our Monday planning meetings, saying he was handling legal stuff or onboarding a new contractor. He seemed tense, always on his phone, and sometimes he'd go quiet when I walked into the room. "Everything okay?" I'd ask. "Yeah, just swamped." "Don't worry about it," he'd say. And I didn't. I figured he was just stressed. Maybe even depressed. We'd both been under pressure. I brought it up a few times, but he'd flash his usual crooked grin and say, "I'm good, Avenue. Go design something beautiful." Then one Thursday afternoon, I noticed something odd while prepping a quarterly update for one of our angel investors. I pulled up the financials and saw a wire transfer, $18,500, to a name I didn't recognize, Morgan and Ellis Holdings. I blinked at the screen. It looked official, almost like a vendor invoice, but I knew every freelancer and contractor we used, and this wasn't one of them. I asked Chase about it. He didn't flinch. "Oh, that's just a short-term leasing arrangement. We're looking into satellite space in Austin. I'll fill you in once it's finalized." That made no sense. We hadn't discussed expansion. And since when did we need leasing help from some holding company? The pit in my stomach started forming that day. A subtle, gnawing worry I couldn't quite place. The next few weeks, I noticed more things. Chase started locking his office door when he left. I found 2 unapproved expense reports totaling nearly $40,000. Our business credit card statements showed hotel stays in Miami and Phoenix, cities we had no business in. Still, I hesitated. What if I was just paranoid? What if Chase was handling something sensitive, like merger talks or a silent investor? But the biggest warning sign came from Brooke, our junior account manager. She was 22, smart as a whip, and detail-obsessed. One morning, she walked into my office and said, "Hey, Avery, did you know we lost the Pacific and Maine account?" I stared at her. "What?" "No, we didn't. I just spoke to their VP last Friday." Brooke looked confused. "That's weird. Chase said we dropped them for being late on payments and told me to remove their credentials from our system." I felt the blood drain from my face. Pacific and Maine wasn't just another client. They were our biggest, worth nearly $120,000 annually. Dropping them without my knowledge was insane. I texted the VP immediately. She replied within minutes. "Hey, Avery. Yeah, we were confused. Chase emailed saying Brightside was shifting direction and no longer serving corporate clients. I assumed you knew." I didn't reply. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. I went back to our server and started pulling every report I could access. I stayed late that night, past 11 p.m. As I dug deeper, I found more vendor contracts I hadn't signed, backdated memos, even a change of address form filed without my consent. It wasn't paranoia anymore. Something was very, very wrong. And yet, even then, even as my gut screamed at me, I still didn't want to believe it. This was Chase, my business partner, my best friend, the guy who once pawned his gaming console to help me pay rent after my internship fell through. He couldn't be stealing from me, could he? But deep down I knew I had just stumbled into something big, something I wasn't supposed to see. And once I did, there would be no going back. After that night, sleep became a stranger to me. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see spreadsheets swimming with forged numbers and contracts signed with my name, but not my hand. By 6 a.m. the next morning, I was back in the office. Chase hadn't shown up yet, and for once, I was glad. I needed space to think, to plan. I dug deeper, bypassing our shared admin folders and logging into our cloud-based financial tools. Thankfully, I had retained super admin privileges, something Chase must have either overlooked or believed I was too naive to use. And that's when everything unraveled. Over $250,000 had been redirected to Morgan and Ellis Holdings over the past 9 months. The company wasn't just some random vendor. It was entirely fake, registered in Delaware, and guess whose name was on the incorporation papers? Chase D. Morgan. My mouth went dry. He'd created a shell company, named it to sound legitimate, and used it to drain our accounts. That wasn't just betrayal, it was embezzlement. I stared at the screen as my heart pounded. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was fact, undeniable and documented. I felt a wave of nausea rise up, but I swallowed it down. I didn't have time to be sick. I needed help. I texted one person I knew I could trust, Harper Lynn, my cousin and a corporate attorney based in San Francisco. She'd helped review some of our early contracts back in the day, and I knew she wouldn't sugarcoat anything. I need legal advice. Privately. It's urgent. Harper, call me.
Now.
I stepped out into the parking lot and told her everything. How Chase had locked me out of client deals, faked vendor records, and was now funneling 6 figures into his own fake company. She listened in stunned silence. Avery, I hate to say this, but this is serious corporate fraud. You need to protect yourself. Right now. What do I do first? I asked. Freeze all outgoing funds. Change passwords. Gather every shred of evidence. Then lawyer up. Do not confront him yet. She was right. If I played this wrong, he could spin it, erase the evidence, or worse, accuse me of wrongdoing. By noon, I had revoked Chase's administrative access to our bank portals and backed up everything onto an encrypted drive. I also made copies, one I kept in my safe at home, one I mailed to Harper, and another to a secure cloud drive under a name Chase would never recognize. But it wasn't long before the beast stirred. At 2:43 p.m., Chase barged into my office, looking flustered and red-faced. Why the hell can't I access our accounts? I stared at him, heart thudding, because I found the transfers. His face changed instantly, shock, then anger, then that smug, calculated look I hadn't seen before. I don't know what you think you found, but you're overreacting. I have copies of everything. Morgan and Ellis is you, Chase. He stood silent, then gave a cold laugh. You don't have proof that'll hold up in court. Wanna bet? I said quietly. He leaned across the desk. You want to blow this up? Fine. Just remember, you were never listed as a full co-owner. I handled the paperwork. I'm the legal face of Brightside, and if you try to drag this out, you'll go down with me. I felt the air go out of my lungs. He wasn't bluffing. He had handled the incorporation. I had never thought twice about letting him sign the original state filings because we were supposed to be equals. I was trusting. Too trusting. After he left, I locked the office door and sobbed silently for 20 minutes. The next day, I retained Pamela Ortiz, a powerhouse Denver-based business attorney who specialized in corporate theft. I handed over everything, bank statements, internal messages, emails, even the fake vendor profiles Chase had created. You have a solid civil fraud case, Pamela said. But it won't be fast and it won't be easy. He'll fight this. Hard. By the end of the week, we had filed a formal civil lawsuit against Chase Morgan for corporate embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, and fraudulent misrepresentation. The day the papers were served, Chase posted a smug photo on Instagram from a rooftop bar with the caption, "When the snakes try to bite, just stomp harder." He wasn't afraid. He thought I'd break under pressure. He underestimated me. Within 2 weeks, he countersued, claiming I had mismanaged the company and emotionally destabilized the workplace, his pathetic attempt to muddy the waters. He had money for high-powered lawyers, and connections I didn't. Worse, I started getting strange calls from clients. "We heard you're being investigated?" Chase said Brightside is dissolving. He was poisoning the narrative, painting me as unstable and incompetent. Some clients froze payments. Others left altogether. Our staff were caught in the crossfire. Brooke pulled me aside one day and said, "Avery, I don't know what's going on between you two, but we believe you. Just tell us how we can help." I hugged her tightly. "Thank you. Just hang in there. Please." Meanwhile, Harper flew in and helped Pamela refine our case. We subpoenaed bank records and email logs. It turned out Chase had even rerouted client payments into personal accounts. This wasn't just civil theft. This was criminal. Pamela filed a motion to escalate to criminal prosecution under Colorado's business fraud statutes. The DA's office got involved. That's when things shifted. Chase went silent. His lawyers stopped posting cocky statements. And the judge granted us a preliminary injunction, freezing Chase's personal assets, including 2 of his cars, a downtown condo, and nearly $200,000 in his accounts. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. We were only halfway through the storm. The betrayal had cost me more than money. It had shattered the foundation of how I trusted people. But if Chase thought he could take everything and walk away untouched, he was about to learn something about me. I don't back down. Especially when you steal my life's work. There's something surreal about watching your name dragged through legal mud in a courtroom filled with strangers, especially when the person doing it used to be your closest friend. By the time we entered pretrial discovery, I felt like I was living in a parallel universe. Brightside Creative, my baby, was hanging by a thread. I was barely covering payroll. Clients were nervous. Our reputation, once rock solid, had turned murky under Chase's smear campaign. But I didn't care about my pride anymore. I cared about justice. Pamela, my attorney, sat me down after our second hearing. "He's going to try to run you out of money. It's what people like him do. You need to brace for that." She wasn't wrong. Chase had hired a defense team with a reputation for scorched earth tactics. They filed motion after motion, each one trying to delay, discredit, or confuse. At one point, they even questioned whether I had actually contributed to the company's growth. They requested internal Slack messages, email threads, even creative drafts just to cast doubt. Harper warned me it would get personal. They'll dig up anything they can twist. Old disagreements, employee turnover, anything. And they did. They brought up a contractor we fired 2 years ago for missing deadlines, suggesting I had been emotionally volatile and created a toxic environment. They even tried to imply I had mental health issues based on a private therapy session I once mentioned in a podcast interview. I remember sitting there, jaw clenched, thinking, wow, this is what Chase has become. I didn't recognize him anymore. Meanwhile, I had to keep the business afloat. I cut my own salary to 0, sold my car, moved into a smaller apartment, let go of 2 employees, both with tears in my eyes. But I also got scrappier, smarter, stronger. Brooke stepped up in ways I didn't expect. She took over client communication and helped rebuild trust with accounts that had almost walked. I started offering pro bono strategy calls to retain loyalty and keep our name clean. In the evenings, I'd stay up late reading legal documents, highlighting discrepancies, organizing files, reviewing every invoice Chase had ever touched. I was exhausted, but determined. Then came the deposition. I sat across from Chase in a small, glass-walled conference room, recording devices clicking softly on the table. He wore a sharp blue suit and a smug expression that made my stomach turn. When Pamela asked, "Mr. Morgan, can you explain this $87,000 transfer from Brightside's operating account to your personal account in July of last year?" He replied, "That was a bonus. I approved it as CEO. But there is no record of any board approval or partner agreement authorizing that bonus," Pamela said calmly. He shrugged. "Avery and I had an understanding." "No," I said, finally speaking. "We had an understanding that neither of us would take more than 10% of net profit until we hit $1 million in revenue." He gave me a dead-eyed look. "Things changed. You were too focused on design work to notice the real business operations." I wanted to scream, but I kept my voice level. "You're confusing trust with ignorance. And now, you're confusing theft with leadership." Pamela slid a thick folder toward the court reporter. "We'd like to submit these as evidence. Bank statements showing 14 separate transfers totaling over $270,000 to accounts controlled by Mr. Morgan, none of which were disclosed or authorized." That was the moment his smirk faded. Back at the office that evening, I sat in my empty break room with a cup of reheated coffee and stared out the window at the streetlights flickering below. I thought about everything I had lost, friends who had distanced themselves to avoid the drama, opportunities missed because I was trapped in litigation, and a version of myself that used to be more trusting, more open. But I also thought about everything I had gained. I had learned to stand up for myself in rooms full of people who doubted me. I had learned that the law wasn't just for the powerful, it could be a weapon for the wronged, too. And I had learned that resilience doesn't come from strength, it comes from heartbreak and from the decision to rise anyway. One night, Brooke emailed me a file she had dug up while helping me archive old records. The subject line said, "You'll want to see this." It was a document Chase had tried to delete, a proposal to sell Brightside to a private firm for $1.5 million, with him listed as sole beneficiary. I felt my breath hitch. He was going to sell the company. Behind my back. Take the payout. Leave me with nothing. That discovery shifted everything. We had grounds now to file for fraudulent intent to dissolve without shareholder consent. Pamela smiled for the first time in weeks when I brought her the document. This just went from a civil suit to a slam dunk. We filed the updated claim immediately. The court approved a hearing to fast-track a potential judgment lien, which meant if we won, we could seize Chase's assets directly. But there was still one final risk. He could try to flee, liquidate assets, move money offshore. So we filed a motion to freeze Chase's accounts, all of them, personal and corporate. The judge reviewed our evidence and granted a 30-day freeze pending trial. The look on Chase's face in court that day, I'll never forget it. Panic. Pure, unfiltered panic. The man who once stood tall and arrogant now sat hunched over, eyes darting, fingers twitching. His empire of lies was collapsing, and for the first time, he was the one scrambling. I walked out of the courthouse that day, not triumphant, but resolved. He'd stolen from me, lied to me, tried to erase me. But I wasn't done. The trial was weeks away, and I was ready. The morning of the trial, I stood in front of my mirror, pulling my blazer straight with shaking hands. I had gone over my testimony a dozen times with Pamela, but nothing could fully prepare me for what it would feel like to stare down the person who had tried to destroy me. Courtroom 4C was quiet when I walked in, the kind of quiet that hums with anticipation. Chase was already there, seated next to his attorneys, dressed in yet another designer suit. He didn't look at me. Not once. The judge entered, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Eleanor Ramsey, known for being sharp, fair, and having zero tolerance for theatrics. That suited me just fine. I didn't need drama. I just needed truth. The proceedings opened with Chase's legal team trying to reframe the entire narrative. They called it a misunderstanding, claimed our business agreement was verbal and therefore open to interpretation. They painted me as disorganized, emotional, creatively driven, but financially naive. They said Chase had stepped up to handle the operations because I couldn't. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was burning. Then Pamela stood. Calm, composed, and deadly precise. She laid it all out, chronologically, methodically. Every unauthorized transaction, every forged document, every vendor Chase had made up to reroute money. She displayed side-by-side signatures, mine and the fakes. Expert witnesses confirmed the discrepancies. Then came the highlight, the buyout proposal Chase had hidden, the one that named him sole recipient of a $1.5 million acquisition offer. Pamela walked the judge through it. This document was never disclosed to Miss Collins, Your Honor. It was only uncovered because our team reviewed deleted server files. Mr. Morgan intended to sell the company without informing or compensating the plaintiff, despite her being co-founder, partner, and primary revenue generator. Judge Ramsey adjusted her glasses. Mr. Morgan, do you deny this intent? Chase cleared his throat. I don't recall authoring that version of the agreement. It may have been a draft. Pamela didn't even flinch. The metadata shows it was finalized and saved from Mr. Morgan's personal account on July 12th at 2:18 a.m.
Boom.
I could feel the energy shift. For the first time, Chase looked small. Then it was my turn to testify. I took the stand, my palms sweating against the wood railing. But when I opened my mouth, something unexpected happened. I stopped shaking. I trusted Chase Morgan, I said clearly. We built Brightside Creative together. I believed we were equals, not just on paper, but in spirit. And while I focused on building relationships, delivering results, and designing campaigns that changed people's businesses, he was behind my back, signing my name to documents I never saw. Creating fake vendors, stealing money, lying to our staff, to our clients, and worst of all, to me. I looked directly at him. You didn't just take money. You took my peace, my name, my reputation, and you used it to prop yourself up. His eyes dropped to the floor. Pamela wrapped up our case with one final exhibit, a voice recording from a phone call Chase had with a mutual acquaintance. He didn't know he was being recorded. In it, he bragged about how he didn't owe Avery a damn thing and how she was too soft to fight back. When that played in court, I swear you could hear the air leave the room. His lawyer tried to object, but the judge overruled it. That was the breaking point. After closing arguments, we were given a recess while the judge reviewed. I stepped outside into the sunlight, my legs shaking. Harper met me there, squeezing my hand. Whatever happens, you did it. You stood your ground. I just want it to be over, I whispered. An hour later, we were called back in. The courtroom fell into silence as Judge Ramsey delivered her ruling. In reviewing all submitted evidence, testimony, and legal argument, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ms. Avery Collins. My heart stopped. Judge Ramsey continued, the defendant, Mr. Chase Morgan, is hereby ordered to pay $347,000 in restitution, plus damages totaling $150,000 for breach of fiduciary duty, for a combined judgment of $497,000. She looked directly at him. Furthermore, due to clear evidence of fraud, this court refers Mr. Morgan to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. I felt my breath catch. Criminal charges. Justice. Real, tangible justice. Chase didn't say a word. He just sat there, face pale, lips pressed in a thin line. Pamela squeezed my shoulder as I sat down. You did it, Avery. You got your life back. But as the courtroom cleared and reporters began to gather outside, I didn't feel like celebrating.
Not yet.
Because even though I had won on paper, in public, there was still a part of me grieving. Grieving the version of Chase I used to believe in. Grieving the innocence I'd lost. Grieving the years of hard work that had been stained by betrayal. But somewhere underneath the sorrow was something stronger.
Power.
I had taken back my voice. And no one, especially not Chase Morgan, was going to silence it again. The judgment was just the beginning of the end. 2 weeks after the trial, Chase's frozen assets were liquidated under court order. His prized Range Rover, the luxury downtown condo, the fake LLC account gone. And every time another asset transferred into the restitution account, Pamela would send me a short message. One step closer. By the end of the month, Nearly $400,000 had been recovered. The rest would come in installments, court-enforced, with penalties if he missed a single payment. I didn't need the money as much as I needed the closure. But still, I wasn't about to turn it down. Meanwhile, the DA's office began building a criminal case against him. I didn't attend the first hearing. I didn't need to see Chase in handcuffs. The civil trial had already taken enough from me emotionally. I wanted to move forward, not linger in the wreckage. Rebuilding Brightside wasn't easy. I lost a few clients permanently, ones who didn't want to be associated with legal drama. But others came back after the verdict, their trust slowly restored. And some even said they admired the way I handled it all. But truth be told, I didn't feel heroic. I felt tired. In the quiet moments, late at night, after the office emptied, I'd sit at my desk and let it all catch up to me. The sleepless nights,
The shame.
the fear, the heartbreak. I wasn't just rebuilding a company. I was rebuilding myself. Brooke remained by my side. She was more than just an employee now. She was a friend, someone who had seen me unravel and never once walked away. "I think I finally understand what leadership actually looks like," she told me one afternoon. "It's not the person barking orders or writing checks. It's the one still standing when everything falls apart." That meant more to me than any courtroom victory. I also decided to restructure Brightside. No more unchecked power. No more one-person access to financials. I brought in an advisory board, established clear ownership rights, and rewrote every internal policy with Harper's help. Transparency became our religion. But beyond the business, something deeper had shifted in me. For so long, I had tied my self-worth to the success of Brightside. When Chase betrayed me, it felt like I had failed. Like I wasn't enough, smart enough, cautious enough, hard enough. But I know now that's what abusers rely on. That doubt. That shame. They weaponize your trust and hope you'll stay quiet, shrink small, disappear. I didn't. A month after the trial, I gave a talk at a local entrepreneur summit titled, "When Trust Becomes a Liability, and How I Survived Corporate Betrayal." I told my story, raw and unpolished. I shared the spreadsheets, the red flags, the silence I kept out of fear and pride. Afterward, 2 women came up to me crying. One had just discovered her co-founder was forging investor emails. The other had been cut out of her own salon by a cousin who forged the lease. They said my story gave them the courage to act. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just my story. It was ours. All of us who had been deceived, sidelined, underestimated. We were done being silent. As for Chase, he disappeared from Denver not long after the criminal charges were filed. Rumor was he moved to Phoenix and tried starting a new consulting firm under a different name. But word spread fast in our industry. No one wanted to work with him. No one wanted to risk it. He became what he had tried to make me: invisible. I won't pretend everything's perfect now. There are still days when I flinch at unexpected emails or second-guess my trust in new hires. I still carry some of the scars. But I also carry strength I didn't know I had. I don't measure success the same way anymore. I don't chase validation. And I sure as hell don't share equity without ironclad contracts and multiple witness signatures. Brightside Creative is smaller now, more intimate. But every client, every teammate, every dollar is earned honestly. That means more than the wild growth we once had. Recently, I celebrated our 5-year anniversary. I stood in the same office Chase once tried to steal from me and looked out at a team that believed in me, not because of the title I held, but because of the person I became. After the toast, Brooke handed me a small box. Inside was a keychain engraved with 4 simple words. "You took it back." I smiled through tears. Yes, I did. My name, my voice, my company, my future. I took it all back.